Hey, everybody. Welcome to another How to Succeed podcast. This is the show that helps you get to the top and stay there. This week, we're talking about selling to the person and not the persona. The following podcast is copyrighted by Sandler Systems, Inc., protected by U.S. copyright laws. Sandler is the worldwide leader in sales, management, and customer service training with over 200 offices around the world. If you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast. What are you doing? What are you waiting for? You're messing it up. Also, we do this live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So if you want to join in the conversation, hit the comments underneath this video right now. My guest this week is Collin Mitchell, and he's right there. He's the VP of Sales at Lithium, and he is the host of the Sales Transformation podcast. So if you haven't checked that one out, you can also search for Sales Transformation anywhere you are listening or watching this one. All right, Collin, welcome to the show. Tell me a little bit about selling to the person and not the persona. What does that mean? That's a phrase you use a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, for having me. I've heard that we have some good guests, such as yourself, on the Sales Transformation podcast.
That's true.
And I actually had the pleasure of meeting you in real life, which is actually a thing at the Sandler Summit. So glad to be doing this here. And yeah, selling to the person instead of the persona. I think a lot of sales orgs understand the ideas of building out their personas of, these people that they want to target, that they think maybe they can solve a problem for, or they hope that the prospect cares about solving that problem enough to pay them some money, right? But I know that, Sandler is a big fan of DISC. And DISC is something that's been around for a long time, but not a lot of sales organizations have really been able to do it super well, unless, of course, they've gone through a Sandler training. But selling to the person allows you to actually personalize your entire sales process, all the way from prospecting to negotiating and closing, based on the personality of that person, what they care about most, what they don't, how to build a winning connection. And you can customize every step of the sales process based on the person that you're selling to. So what sellers are able to then do is actually sell the way that that buyer wants to buy.
Yeah, and it is the big difference. And I think the difference between human and machines and the marketing and the automation that we see now, right? This has been my big kick this year because AI has just gone gangbusters, and there's new tools coming out every single day about how you automate this, right? And you just build these personas, and then you build these messages to this, and the tool will customize it or send it out, and mass marketing and mass selling even now is possible these days. But there is some magic here. There is some magic for salespeople, and the values of humans on our team is that they can sell to the person. Yes. So sure, ChatGPT can tell a story, but it can't tell your story, or it can't tell the story of this specific buyer because they're in a different place than everybody else. So I think that's kind of my initial thoughts on the attitude and the approach. When you think of the word attitude, what are some of the beliefs or common misconceptions that sellers need to have in this modern landscape of AI and the tech tools available?
Yeah, the problem is you're right. It's extremely noisy. There's a lot of tools out there, and frankly, some of them don't really move the needle much. I had the pleasure of working with Humantic and saw some of the results that it can drive, and we actually use it at Lithium. At Lithium, we manage, multiple campaigns, and we get to see how powerful this stuff is. And you said something interesting that really stuck out to me, right? Is telling the story. But the interesting thing is it the right person that even cares about stories? Right? Because a lot of people think, hey, everybody wants to hear these customer success stories, and we need to name drop and logo drop and do all of these things, which is the way that you see a lot of outreach today. And the problem is that's only going to work with one particular type of person. And so you're leaving all of these other people on the table that you could potentially drive opportunities with if you just changed your approach slightly.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. That's a great mindset to think about, is that you even just need to focus on this, that there are different people. And so I think that comes to me when I think of all these technological applications that we can use now and all these apps is, sure, we can maybe AI robot ourselves and create some sort of deep fake of ourselves selling to different personas or even individual people based on their LinkedIn profile. But should we? Should we is a better question. And then also, a lot of these aggregates like ChatGPT are collecting data from all around the world, which means it's an average.
Mhm.
And average salespeople stink, in my opinion. I want to be one of the really good ones, one of the top performers. And just because something works with 80% of buyers doesn't mean it's going to work with this one individual buyer in front of us, right?
Yeah.
So, how do we think about that?
Well, and nobody wants to be average, or else they probably wouldn't be in sales. At least that's what I think. But the
Most
thing,
salespeople miss quota, right? Like average is not really great. I hate to hate to say
yeah,
it.
the average is horrible. Let's just be real. Um, and I think the thing is you can't rely on these tools too much, right? But you also need to know how to use them, and you need to know which ones to use, right? So you mentioned,
Mm.
Chat GPT. Well, there's a whole camp of people that are like, yeah, it's horrible, it's terrible, and then there's a whole other side of the spectrum of people that think like, oh my gosh, it's going to steal our jobs, you know? And the reality is probably somewhere like in between, right? And,
Yeah.
and, and the thing is you can use these tools to really make your job a lot easier, right? We're talking about selling to the person. Well, there's AI tools that can, obviously help you understand the personality of these people so that you can approach how you prospect to them, how you sell to them, how you show up in meetings. There's also, AI tools that can do a tremendous amount of research for you. Just picking up general information on these people that can save you a ton of time. Right? There's AI tools that can help you update things in your CRM or better forecast. I mean, AI is extremely powerful. It's here. It's not going anywhere. It's getting better, and sales teams need to understand how to use it, which ones they should be using, and leverage them to not be average.
So that's a great setup for our behavior section of the show, which is how do we do the right thing at the right time? At Lithium, like you mentioned, you're managing a lot of campaigns. I'm imagining a lot of that has to do with multiple tools, and tech stacks are just growing so fast these days. And I forget what the last number I saw was, but somewhere between like 12 and 20, 35 apps or something are average for sales reps these days. When you think about specifically selling to the person, what are some of your favorite apps? We've already mentioned Humantic AI and stuff, but what do you feel like are the best tools to use, and how do you apply them in what stages of the process?
I mean, I think that there is a thing as tech overload, right? Which is what I think a lot of people have gotten to, because I talk to sales leaders every day, and even more specifically while I was at Humantic, because we were a sales tool, and everybody is moving in the opposite direction of like, how do we get rid of all these tools that we bought in the good days when it was just like go go go, and hey, if it looked decent, let's buy it. Which unfortunate for salespeople that weren't that great, that thought they were great because it was just so dang easy to sell stuff. Now you got to be really good. You got to build a good business case. You've got to, be able to. You're competing with everybody. Everybody's fighting for the same budget. It's tough out there. So knowing which tools, you see a lot of the tools starting to um, try to be a single source, right? A lot of the sales engagements now have conversational intelligence and have data and so on. So at Lithium, we're an Apollo shop, so we use Apollo because it solves a lot of problems for us. And then we're always trying new tech all of the time to see what is good, right? Because we want to be using the latest, best tools out there to drive results for clients. And so the thing is, rather than just buy anything, right, you got to make sure that your team's also going to adopt it, which is a whole nother issue, right? So how does it fit
Yeah.
into your workflows? What sort of support around enablement are you going to get? The tools out there that are providing these types of things are the ones that are going to drive the best results for you and your sales team.
Can you answer this question? Because I know it's so specific and variable for the use cases, but where do you think a tech enabled salesperson should leverage technology the most? Early prospecting with strangers, marketing automation, during the sales process and the funnel and the conversations and in meetings, and like you said, doing conversational intelligence or sentiment analysis based on your Zoom recordings and stuff that you can do now. Or is it late stage with customers and following up and nurturing, or closing tactics? I haven't seen as much maybe in closing and presentation skills, but maybe there is data available and I'm not aware of. Where do you think technology makes the biggest impact?
It's hard to say. I mean, I don't know. I think for every sales organization, it's different. And it also depends on what is the makeup of your sales team, right? Because I've been in many conversations where it's like, hey, this is great. Like I love everything that you're showing me. Like I could see how this could work. But we've got this sales team and they don't really like trying new things. And it's like, yeah, heard that story before, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on the makeup of your sales team and the culture of your organization. And then there's also the other side of that where like a lot of times new tech gets tested with that SDR BDR function, right? So I've been
Mhm.
in those conversations talking to sales leaders and they're like, yeah, hey, this looks great, love it, everything, but our team's just a little exhausted on trying new tools right now. And it's like, yeah, because you've been trying everything under the sun. Of course
You're
they are.
staffed out.
And,
Yeah.
and the problem with that is then when they finally get a tool that can actually make an impact to make a difference in their business, you don't get the adoption that you're looking for because they're like, yep, here we go. Here's another tool. And so you got to find a balance, as an organization of like, not just trying everything, and also where does it make the biggest impact, right? Is it that top of funnel? And I guess it comes down to looking at your sales data. Where are we struggling the most? Are we struggling to get more at bats, or are we getting enough at bats but we're not converting them? And so, depending on where you see there's areas for improvement as a sales organization, would be a pretty good indicator of where we could maybe invest in some tech to really help the organization as a whole.
That's a really great tip. And I want to flip the question now and say, where are humans most valuable in the sales process? And I think also flip our conversation back to selling to the person and not the persona. That inside of that, doing the right thing at the right time means meeting the customer where they are and maybe having your human salesperson add judgment to this. Maybe I don't use the gong call recording on this call because this buyer is shy or they're not going to talk off the record if I'm recording it. And other times, ooh, I really need to record this because there are decision makers that are not here that are going to want to hear this. And we need special coaching on this, or I want to record this to show to other clients as a demo. I think those types of decisions are really the interesting behavioral ones that I don't hear people talking about, right? Because the people selling the tech say, use this on every call.
Yeah.
And like you said, the salespeople are like, maybe I'll use it when I remember. But nobody's really talking about when do we leverage the tool? When do we leverage the human? And how do we decide, maybe I don't use it this
Yeah.
time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts there?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that question. And I think you brought up a couple good examples, right? Because I know that part of the Sandler sales system, right, is developing a bond, building rapport, right?
Mhm.
That's something that AI can't do, right? That is a human that needs to be able to do that, whether that's in person, whether that's virtually. Now, can tools help you get more prepared and have research faster and know the personality of the person so that it makes that a little bit easier? Yes, but it can't do it for you, right? That can't be replaced. And so that's great news for all the salespeople that are biting their nails right now, thinking AI is going to steal their job. But what you also mentioned was when do you turn the recording off, right? I've been on the calls where people get weird that you're recording the call. I personally don't care. But there's some people who's like, hey, what is this note taker thing here? Like, can you kick this out? And so that's, and so maybe part of the process is like, you just call that out. Hey, just, I've got this here, to make sure sometimes I tend to forget things, and, I hope you don't mind. And you can kind of be a human and read the person, and sense if that, if they're, oh yeah, hey, no problem. Cool. Or, depending on how they reply to that question, as a seller, you can use your, human instincts to identify if, like, hey, maybe you should just kick it out. Right. Um, and so those are a couple of examples. I think also, different people are going to tend to uh, be better engaged on certain channels, and a lot of that has to do with their personality too, right? Are they more are they more extroverted people? Typically those are the people that I think, you have a little bit more success with, like, engaging and building relationships on social, right? Are they a little bit more introverted? Like, those are the people that are going to hop into Zoom and probably not turn on their camera, right? So they might prefer that you just pick up the phone and call them. So those are also some things that, as a person. Another thing that, AI can't replace is, just being able to build context around, certain things, right? Like, tools may be able to identify, Mike, where you went to college and who your, mascot is and all that good stuff. But AI can't say, like, if I went there and you went there, or, if somebody that I know went there, or one time I was dropping off my kids, checking out that school, and ate at the coffee shop and had this particular thing to eat, to build like a connection, right? That's
Yeah.
another, more good news for salespeople that, again, are thinking AI is going to steal their job.
It's interesting, isn't it? The human brain makes such different connections, and there are some low-lying fruit. There is that, commonality. You can see that both you and I went to the same school, but you're right. That magic is in. I'll shout out Shakespeare's Pizza at the University of Missouri, or other things that's just magical about that campus, that really creates the connection that goes, oh yeah, I'm in on that. I can't wait to get back. And so I think as we move into our technique portion here, these tools of how we do all of this, or how Humantech and other tools help us personalize our approach, becomes very interesting to me, because that data. Oh, and we got one. Shout out to Tom. See, Tom knows what I'm talking about with the Shakespeare's Pizza.
Yeah.
He's got the MIZ for Mizzou. That is the challenge, right? And I think if we go back to the disc, do you feel like that's the best model? I feel like people put their behaviors out there. They know what their preference are. It's a great place to start. It's pretty easy. There's two axes. Are they active and extroverted? Are they introverted and quiet? Are they task oriented? Are they people oriented? Pretty easy to put people in one of four buckets here pretty quick. When you think about selling to the person, how detailed do you get? Because I've seen all kinds of frameworks at Sandler. We have about 6 or 7 even that we teach, and you can use in different applications. But where do you start?
Yeah. I think the best place to start is first knowing yourself, right? Obviously, I think you got to know your own self well, like really well. Because I think even a lot of salespeople don't know that, right? They don't know. And the problem is then they're out there selling the way that they would buy if they were a buyer, but not every buyer that they're engaged with is like them. So knowing yourself is step one, right? And then that way, once you understand, these different personality types, and you start to, get to move towards, say, expert level of, like, oh, they're a I type or they're a D type, and you just know, okay, hey, that's in my compatibility zone, or it's outside of my compatibility zone, right? So, like, small talk, pleasantries, things like that, that maybe, you might be a more straight to the point person. And then, you're, getting engaged with somebody who's, kind of an opposite of you in that regard. You're going to know that, you need to go outside, and then you can start to pick up things, and you start to see, like, oh, wow, that worked well. I would have never done that. Right. And vice versa. So I think at every every step of the sales process. Now, the challenge is being consistent, right? So if you do that on your first call, you know, and then you forget, or you get into a high stakes situation and negotiating, or trying to overcome some objections, or all of the fun stuff of selling, you know that's where people then tend to fall back into their own way of selling, their own natural self, right? And so I think being really clear on yourself first is really important, because then you start to have that level of awareness to then know what to look for, when you get in those situations.
I love that. If I had two quick tips here on this one, it would be ask people. I mean, you can use tools like Humantic AI and others to get maybe a prediction on what their personality style likely is, or some tips on how to interact with them. But I found most people will tell you, "Hey, Colin, do you prefer text message, email, phone call? What's the best
Yeah.
way to get a hold of you?" And you're going to say, "Oh God, don't call me. I'm always in meetings or recording podcasts, so I can't ever respond to that." But if you email me, I'll get back right away, and we can do asynchronous
Yeah.
communication. That's much better for me. Or I have 1,000 emails, so don't email me. I have 1,000 unread ones. Send me a text message and said, people will be honest with you. But then, love what you said, you have to follow that up. You can't
Yeah.
say, okay, well, I know he said he likes text messages, but I really want to send this proposal over, so I'm going to email it and not text him and tell him it's there. Then you're going to miss, and you're going to break rapport, and you're going to struggle with those. And then Sean seconded what you said there too, which is don't be needy. Salespeople with commission breath, and they get under pressure, or they get excited about the sale, and then they throw it all out the window, and they forget what that person said. So whether you got to log it in a CRM or put a Post-it note like right in on your computer screen, be like, this person asked for this.
Yeah.
Let's be this for them. I think that's the best advice.
Hopefully the note taker was on that call when you got that information, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
But reminding those things. All right. I want to learn more about you here, Colin, but any other final tips? Anything we missed I should have asked on this topic of selling to the person and not the persona?
I mean, if we were just to kind of put a bow on that a little bit, right? It's if you think about it at a high level, logically, it just makes no sense. Why would you show up and sell the same way to every single person? And it took me a long time to even figure that out. And I think there's a lot of people that still have not figured that out, where, they're just showing up, they're pressing play on the questions that they ask, how they engage with people on the demo, you name it, right? They sit on Zoom calls, they're 10, 20, 10, 12 Zoom calls a day, and every one of them is exactly the same. We're human beings, and we're all different in various ways. And why do salespeople think that the same exact boring approach is going to work on every single person?
I love that. That brought three things to mind for me to wrap up, and key takeaways here. Number one is we have robots and AIs now. We don't need a human to be a robot and just be a machine and read off a script. We can have an AI avatar read off a script. Number two is at Sandler, we get that a lot because we teach a system and a process and a methodology for doing sales, but that methodology should be applied differently to every single call that you go on. That doesn't mean that everyone needs to be winging. Okay, Colin, well, I don't need to do any prep then whatsoever. It's a total improv. I need to teach everybody differently. No, there are still steps and processes that you need to go through, but how you do that with each buyer needs to be different. And so I think that's what the cool thing is. And point number three is, how do we meet them where they are, right? A savvy buyer that's bought what we've sold 1,000 times and they're a master negotiator or a lifelong client is completely different than this is their first time ever buying it. They're brand new in the role. They have no idea who we are. We're doing this naturally. We're already adjusting our pitch and styles. We just need to pay attention and do this intentionally. And I think we'll have much better results. So great stuff today. Again, this is how to succeed at selling to the person, not the persona. And we're talking with Collin Mitchell, host of the Sales Transformation Podcast. If you haven't listened to that podcast, check it out. micro podcast. How about that for salespeople with short attention spans and short commutes now that we're between Zoom meetings? So check out the Sales Transformation Podcast. And he's VP of Sales at Lithium. If you are looking for more leads and inbound or pre-qualified leads, I'm assuming that is what you're in the market for, right, Colin?
Yeah. Well, this has been a ton of fun. This is a topic that, I love talking about. And I think that a lot of people can benefit. And I think a lot of people are thinking about this, like how, with all this rise of technology, what works, what doesn't work, what should we be investing in, where, what part of the sales cycle, how do we use this stuff to actually move the needle? So really enjoyed talking about this. And yeah, I've never met a short attention span salesperson with a short commute, but I guess if they're out there, my podcast is a great place for them. There's tons of nuggets from the chat that you and I had on there as well.
Love that. Okay, 3 quick questions for you before I let you go. Number 1, at this point in your career, how do you define success?
Oh, that's a good question. For me, success is more around just am I proud of the person that I'm being at home and at work.
Love that. What is the biggest failure or lesson learned, maybe hurdle you had to get over in order to be successful in sales?
Oof. I used to be a transactional commission breath seller that had to learn that there's a better way.
Wow, that's really good too. Do you have a favorite quote, motto, or mantra?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in like really detaching from the outcomes in sales, right? And so something that I tell people a lot of times, and I've used even from my early days, was some will, some won't. Next call.
Oh, I love that one. I think it's the SW3. Yeah, some will, some won't. Someone's waiting. Next, love that. That goes back to an old Sandler rule. I think we even put that in the new book, How to Sell to the Modern Buyer. So you get 5 bonus points to end the podcast as well
All
for
right.
shouting that out. If you're really fancy, there's a couple more SWs in there, like so what, and I forget what the 5th one is, but really great stuff today. I appreciate it. Collin Mitchell, he's VP of Sales at Lithium and host of the Sales Transformation Podcast. Subscribe to that one. If you haven't subscribed to ours, do that as well. And as he mentioned, he came to the Sandler Summit. So we'll have a virtual summit coming up and recordings from the past summit available. Tickets to the next summit in Orlando in 2024 available. You can go to sandler.com/summit for more information. And if you're looking for more information on Humantic AI and some of the tools that we're using to customize our sales approach to the person here at Sandler, we have some cool new partnerships. Just email enterprise@sandler.com for more information. Until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. We'll see ya. Bye.